Move along, Granny. This isn't a homeless shelter. Officer Bradley's voice cuts through the peaceful morning air like a blade. Eleanor Washington, 68, sits quietly on her park bench, a small bag of breadcrumbs in her weathered hands. Pigeons gather at her feet, cooing softly. The white police officer towers over her, his face twisted with contempt. His partner, Morrison, shifts uncomfortably behind him, avoiding eye contact. Eleanor looks up with calm dignity. "Officer, I come here every morning to—" "I don't care what you do every morning." Bradley kicks the bag from her hands. Breadcrumbs scatter across the concrete like broken glass. "Parks are for taxpayers, not vagrants." "Sir, I'm not a vagrant. I taught at Lincoln Elementary for 35 years. Bradley snorts with derision. "Right. And I'm the president." He steps closer, his shadow falling across her face. "You have 2 minutes to disappear before I make this your problem." Eleanor doesn't move. Her spine stays straight, her hands folded. Have you ever watched someone's dignity get trampled while bystanders look away? Every morning at exactly 7 a.m., Eleanor Washington walks the same 3 blocks from her modest apartment on Elm Street. Her silver hair sits in a neat bun. Her floral dress, though simple, is pressed and clean. Her comfortable walking shoes click steadily on the sidewalk. She carries the same small paper bag filled with breadcrumbs saved from her breakfast toast. This ritual has continued for 5 years, ever since she retired from Lincoln Elementary School after 35 years of teaching. Riverside Park sits in the heart of downtown's most expensive district. Luxury condominiums tower above manicured lawns. Trendy coffee shops line the streets with names like Artisan Brew and Urban Grind. Young professionals in expensive suits rush past, clutching designer coffee cups and checking their phones. The park itself spans 2 city blocks. Ancient oak trees provide shade over winding paths. A bronze fountain bubbles in the center, surrounded by perfectly maintained flower beds. Wooden benches face the walking trails where joggers in high-end athletic wear pound the pavement. Eleanor's bench sits beneath the largest oak tree. She chose this spot because it offers the best view of the fountain and attracts the most pigeons. The birds know her schedule. They begin gathering before she arrives, their heads bobbing with anticipation. This morning feels different. Tension hangs in the air like humidity before a storm. Officer Bradley cruises slowly through the neighborhood in his patrol car, his eyes scanning for what he calls problems. At 32, he spent 8 years on the force, the last 3 patrolling this upscale district. His stocky frame fills out his uniform with authority. His jaw stays perpetually clenched, as if the world constantly disappoints him. Recent city ordinances have given him new tools: quality of life violations, public nuisance citations, loitering arrests. The mayor calls it keeping our neighborhood safe. Bradley calls it cleaning house. His partner, Officer Morrison, sits in the passenger seat. At 24, Morrison joined the force just 18 months ago. His academy training emphasized community policing and de-escalation. Reality has proven more complicated. Following Bradley's lead seems safer than making waves. The radio crackles with morning dispatch calls, a fender bender on 5th Street, a noise complaint in the warehouse district. Nothing urgent, nothing that can't wait. Bradley spots Eleanor through the windshield. His knuckles whiten on the steering wheel. For 3 weeks, he's watched her daily routine. An elderly black woman in his clean, upscale territory. It bothers him like a splinter under the skin. "There she is again," he mutters, pulling the cruiser to the curb. "Same time, same place." Morrison glances at Eleanor feeding the pigeons. She moves with gentle precision, her weathered hands scattering crumbs in small piles. The birds cluster around her feet, unafraid. "She's not bothering anyone," Morrison says quietly. Bradley's jaw tightens. "Not bothering anyone? Look at this place." He gestures toward the luxury condos. "Families pay top dollar to live here. They don't want homeless people camping in their park." Is she homeless? She looks. They all have stories, Bradley cuts him off. Sob stories. Excuses. But they're still problems that need solving. Eleanor has no idea she's being watched. She hums an old hymn while the pigeons eat. Sunlight filters through the oak leaves, dappling her face with gold. A gentle breeze carries the scent of fresh flowers from the nearby beds. Other park visitors pass by without incident. A jogger in designer running gear nods politely. A woman walking her small dog smiles warmly. A businessman cutting through to the office building offers a respectful "Good morning." Eleanor responds to each with gracious courtesy. Her voice carries the authority of someone who spent decades managing classrooms. Her posture reflects a lifetime of dignity earned through service. But Bradley sees only what he wants to see: a problem, an eyesore, someone who doesn't belong in his territory. He checks his watch. 7:15 a.m. Time to solve this problem permanently. The morning's peaceful rhythm continues around them. Coffee shop workers arrange pastries in display cases. Commuters wait at bus stops. Children walk to school with backpacks bouncing. None of them notice the storm building inside the police cruiser. None of them see Bradley's hand move to his door handle. None of them realize they're about to witness something that will change everything. Eleanor finishes scattering her breadcrumbs and settles back on the bench. She closes her eyes, letting the morning sun warm her face. The pigeons coo contentedly at her feet. In 30 seconds, her peaceful world will explode. The police car doors slam shut like gunshots. Eleanor doesn't flinch. She's heard those sounds before, during her decades teaching in neighborhoods where police presence meant different things to different people. Bradley's boots crunch on gravel as he approaches. His hand rests casually on his belt, fingers drumming against his radio. Morrison follows 3 steps behind, his younger face already showing concern. "Ma'am." Bradley's voice carries the false politeness of someone used to being obeyed. "I need to see some identification." Eleanor looks up from her bench, hands still holding a few remaining breadcrumbs. "Good morning, officer." "May I ask why?" The question irritates him immediately. His jaw tightens. "Because I'm asking." That's reason enough. She reaches slowly into her small purse, movements deliberate and careful. Her wallet is worn leather, cracked at the edges. She extracts her driver's license and extends it toward Bradley. He snatches it from her fingers, studying it with exaggerated scrutiny. "Eleanor Washington, Elm Street." His eyes flick between the photo and her face. "This address is current?" "Yes, sir. I've lived there 12 years. What are you doing in this park?" Eleanor gestures gently toward the pigeons still pecking at breadcrumbs around her feet. "Feeding the birds. I come every morning at 7. Every morning." Bradley's tone sharpens. "How long has this been going on?" "About 5 years now, since I retired from teaching." Morrison shifts his weight, glancing around the peaceful park. A jogger passes by, earbuds in, completely oblivious to the tension building near the oak tree. A woman walks her golden retriever along the fountain's edge. Morning commuters stream past on the sidewalk beyond. Bradley hands the license back with deliberate roughness, forcing Eleanor to steady herself on the bench. "Mrs. Washington, we've received complaints about loitering in this area." Eleanor's eyebrows raise slightly. "Complaints? About me?" "Multiple complaints." Bradley lies smoothly. "Residents say you're harassing families, making people uncomfortable." "Officer, I've never spoken inappropriately to anyone here. I simply feed the birds and mind my own business." Bradley's face flushes red. Being contradicted by this elderly black woman in front of his partner pushes every button he has. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm saying there must be some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." His voice rises. "You don't belong here. This is a family park in an expensive neighborhood. People pay good money to live here without dealing with... He pauses, searching for words that sound official. Vagrant activity. Eleanor's spine straightens. Her voice carries the authority of decades spent managing unruly parents. I beg your pardon? Morrison finally speaks up. Bradley, maybe we should... Write this up, Morrison. Bradley cuts him off without looking away from Eleanor. Trespassing, public nuisance, possible panhandling. I wasn't panhandling, Eleanor says firmly. I was sitting on a public bench in a public park. Bradley steps closer, using his height to intimidate. His shadow falls across her face like a threat. Lady, I don't care what you think you were doing. I know what I see. Vagrant behavior. Attracting vermin. He kicks at a pigeon near his feet. The bird flutters away with alarmed cries. Eleanor watches the bird settle safely near the fountain. Officer, those aren't vermin. They're just pigeons looking for food. They're pests. Just like people who don't follow simple instructions. The insult hangs in the air like smoke. Morrison's face goes pale. He's never seen Bradley this aggressive with someone who clearly poses no threat. Eleanor folds her hands in her lap, a gesture she perfected during parent-teacher conferences with hostile adults. Sir, I taught elementary school in this neighborhood for 35 years. I know many of the families who live here. I've never caused problems for anyone. Bradley laughs, a harsh sound that makes nearby pigeons scatter. 35 years? Right. And what school was that supposed to be? Lincoln Elementary, just 4 blocks from here. Convenient story. He pulls out his citation book, making a show of flipping through pages. Got any proof of this supposed teaching career? Eleanor reaches into her purse again, extracting a small photo. It shows her standing with a class of second graders, a Teacher of the Year plaque visible on the classroom wall behind them. Bradley barely glances at it. Anyone can get a fake photo printed. Morrison leans over to look. The photo is clearly genuine, showing Eleanor perhaps 10 years younger, surrounded by smiling children of various ethnicities. Her nameplate on the desk reads, Mrs. Washington, 2nd grade. Bradley, Morrison says quietly, this looks real. Bradley's anger flares. His neck turns red above his collar. Morrison, whose side are you on here? He turns back to Eleanor, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I don't care about your sob stories or fake pictures. I care about keeping this neighborhood clean. The word clean carries implications that make Eleanor's jaw clench slightly, but her voice remains steady. Officer Bradley, I'm not bothering anyone. I'm a tax-paying citizen using a public facility. Tax-paying? He snorts with derision. What taxes? Welfare doesn't count. The assumption hits like a slap. Eleanor has never received government assistance in her life. Her teacher's pension, modest though it is, covers her simple needs. But explaining this to Bradley feels like throwing pearls before swine. By now, the confrontation has drawn attention. The jogger with her phone has moved closer, clearly recording. The woman with the golden retriever has stopped walking and is watching with a growing alarm. A businessman in an expensive suit pauses on his way to work, briefcase in hand. Officer, the businessman calls out, is there a problem here? Bradley whirls around. Move along, sir. Police business. The businessman hesitates. He recognizes Eleanor from the neighborhood, has seen her many mornings feeding the birds. She's never caused trouble for anyone. Eleanor catches his eye and gives a subtle shake of her head. Don't interfere. Don't make this worse. The businessman reluctantly continues walking, but pulls out his phone as he goes. Bradley turns back to Eleanor, energized by having an audience. Instead, she stands slowly, her movements dignified despite her 78-year-old bones. I think I should go. Now you're talking sense, Bradley says, and don't come back. Ever. Eleanor bends to collect her empty breadcrumb bag. As she straightens, Bradley's hand shoots out and grabs her wrist with unnecessary force. Actually, change of plans. His grip tightens, fingers digging into her skin. "You're under arrest." Morrison steps forward, genuine alarm in his voice. "Bradley, what are you—" "Trespassing after being warned, resisting lawful orders." Bradley's eyes glitter with satisfaction. "Disorderly conduct." "Turn around, Mrs. Washington. The charges are fabricated and everyone knows it." Eleanor has been completely cooperative. She hasn't raised her voice or made any threatening gestures. But Bradley is drunk on his own power. Eleanor looks directly into his face. Her voice carries the quiet authority of someone who spent decades managing teenagers and hostile parents. "Young man, I strongly suggest you reconsider this course of action." The words carry weight. Something in her tone, her bearing, her absolute lack of fear makes Bradley hesitate for just a moment. This isn't how elderly women are supposed to respond to his authority. Then his pride kicks in harder than before. No elderly black woman tells him what to do. Not in his territory, not in front of witnesses. "Turn around." "Now." His voice cracks slightly with rage. Eleanor complies, her movements slow and deliberate. Bradley produces handcuffs, metal gleaming in the morning sun. The clicking sound echoes across the peaceful park like breaking bones. The jogger's phone captures everything. The woman with the dog gasps audibly. A maintenance worker trimming hedges stops what he's doing to stare in disbelief. Morrison's voice cracks with stress. "Bradley, this doesn't look right. She's cooperating. She's 70 years old." "What doesn't look right," Bradley snarls, "is vagrant scum thinking they can do whatever they want in decent neighborhoods." The racist language drops like a bomb. Several witnesses exchange horrified glances. The jogger's finger hovers over her phone's share button. Eleanor doesn't respond to the slur. She simply stands with her hands cuffed behind her back, chin raised, looking across the park toward the fountain where pigeons still cluster hopefully. She's thinking about a phone call she'll need to make. A conversation with her son about dignity, justice, and consequences. Bradley has no idea what storm he's just unleashed. Bradley's grip on Eleanor's arm tightens as he guides her toward the patrol car. His fingers press hard enough to leave bruises on her weathered skin. She doesn't cry out or resist, but her jaw sets with quiet determination. "Watch your head," he says with mock courtesy, placing his palm on top of her silver hair as he forces her into the back seat. The gesture is unnecessarily rough, designed to humiliate rather than protect. The car door slams shut with finality. Eleanor sits in the plastic back seat, hands cuffed behind her back, looking straight ahead through the reinforced partition. The smell of disinfectant and fear permeates the confined space. Morrison climbs into the passenger seat, his face pale with anxiety. "Bradley, I really think we should—" "Should what?" Bradley snaps, starting the engine. "Let criminals walk free?" "That's not how this works, rookie." Through the windshield, Eleanor watches the jogger still recording with her phone. The woman with the golden retriever has approached a uniformed park maintenance worker, gesturing frantically toward the police car. The businessman who tried to intervene earlier is speaking rapidly into his phone, pacing near the fountain. Bradley notices the attention too. Instead of concern, it feeds his sense of righteousness. "Look at that," he says to Morrison. Bleeding heart's getting all worked up about proper law enforcement. He grabs his radio and keys the microphone. "Dispatch Unit 47. Transporting one female suspect to headquarters. Charges include trespassing, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest." The dispatcher's voice crackles back. "Copy, Unit 47. Nature of the disturbance?" Bradley glances in the rearview mirror at Eleanor, who sits with perfect posture despite the handcuffs. "Vagrant subject refusing to comply with lawful orders. Multiple witness complaints about aggressive panhandling." Eleanor's eyes meet his in the mirror. She doesn't speak, but something in her gaze makes him look away quickly. The drive to police headquarters takes 12 minutes through downtown traffic. Bradley turns the radio volume up unnecessarily loud, letting dispatch calls and static fill the car with harsh noise. Every pothole sends Eleanor bouncing against the hard plastic seat. Morrison stares out the passenger window, watching familiar streets scroll past. He joined the force to help people, to make communities safer. This feels like something else entirely. At headquarters, Bradley parks in the designated arrest processing zone. The building is a concrete fortress, all sharp angles and bulletproof glass. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead like angry insects. "End of the line, Mrs. Washington," Bradley says, opening her door. "Time to face reality." Eleanor steps out with as much dignity as handcuffs allow. Her floral dress is wrinkled from the car seat, but her spine remains straight. She surveys the police station with the calm assessment of someone taking mental notes. Inside, the booking area smells of industrial coffee and anxiety. Fluorescent lights cast everything in harsh, unflattering shadows. The walls are painted institutional green, scuffed and stained from years of processing human misery. Desk Sergeant Williams, a black officer with 20 years on the force, looks up from his paperwork as Bradley approaches with Eleanor. His eyebrows rise slightly. In 2 decades, he's seen every type of arrest, but elderly women feeding pigeons is a new one. "What do we have here, Bradley?" Williams asks, his tone professionally neutral but his eyes curious. "A vagrant woman causing disturbances in Riverside Park," Bradley reports, pushing Eleanor forward slightly. "Multiple complaints from residents about aggressive behavior." Williams studies Eleanor more carefully. Something about her bearing, her quiet dignity, strikes him as familiar. She carries herself like someone accustomed to respect, not someone living on the streets. "Ma'am, I need your full name and address for booking," Williams says gently. "Eleanor Marie Washington," she responds clearly. 1247 Elm Street, Apartment 3B. Williams types the information into his computer terminal. The screen flickers as it searches databases. While the system processes, he asks routine questions. Age? 68. Occupation? Eleanor pauses, considering her answer. Retired educator. Bradley snorts from behind her. "Sure she is." They all have careers in their imaginations. Williams shoots him a warning look. His terminal beeps, displaying Eleanor's information. Clean driving record. No criminal history. Current voter registration. Previous addresses show stability going back decades. "Mrs. Washington," Williams says slowly, "the system shows you as a retired teacher. Is that correct?" "Lincoln Elementary School," Eleanor confirms. 35 years in the classroom." Williams' expression shifts slightly. He grew up in this neighborhood. Lincoln Elementary sits just 4 blocks from where he played as a child. He remembers teachers from that era, respected figures who shaped entire generations. "What grade did you teach?" "Second grade for most of my career, 3rd grade for the last 5 years. Bradley interrupts impatiently. "Can we skip the reunion and process this arrest? I've got real criminals to catch." Williams ignores him, still studying Eleanor. "Mrs. Washington, you wouldn't happen to remember teaching a student named Marcus Williams about 25 years ago?" Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. "Marcus Williams? Tall boy, always asking questions about science? Had trouble with math but loved reading about dinosaurs?" Williams breaks into a genuine smile. "That's my nephew." He's Dr. Marcus Williams now, pediatric surgeon in Chicago. The connection changes the entire atmosphere. Bradley senses the shift and doesn't like it. "Williams, we don't have time for this. Book her and let's move on." "What exactly are the charges?" Williams asks, turning to his computer. Bradley pulls out his citation book, reading from notes he scribbled in the car. Trespassing in a public park. Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest. Williams's eyebrows climb higher. Trespassing in a public park? She was loitering, panhandling, making residents uncomfortable. Was she asking for money? Well, not directly, but was she threatening anyone? She was being disruptive. How exactly was she being disruptive? Bradley's face reddens. She refused to leave when ordered. Williams looks at Eleanor, then back at Bradley. In 20 years, he's developed a keen sense for when arrests smell wrong. This one reeks. Mrs. Washington, what were you doing in the park? Feeding pigeons, she answers simply. Same thing I've done every morning for 5 years. And when Officer Bradley asked you to leave? I asked why. I explained that I come there regularly and have never bothered anyone. Williams turns back to Bradley. Did she comply with your instructions? Eventually, but did she resist when you placed her under arrest? Morrison finally speaks up, his voice barely above a whisper. She was completely cooperative. Bradley whirls on his partner. Morrison, what the hell? She never resisted, Morrison continues, his conscience finally overriding his fear. She asked questions, but she was polite. She showed ID when requested. She was getting up to leave when you decided to arrest her. The booking area falls silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and distant radio chatter. Williams absorbs Morrison's testimony while Eleanor stands quietly, hands still cuffed behind her back. Bradley realizes he's losing control of the situation. Look, I don't care what anyone thinks. I made a judgment call based on community complaints and suspicious behavior. What community complaints? Williams asks. Do you have documentation? They were verbal complaints. From whom? Bradley hesitates. He can't produce witnesses because there weren't any legitimate complaints. I don't have to justify every arrest to... Actually, you do, Williams interrupts, especially when you arrest respected community members for feeding birds in public parks. Eleanor speaks for the first time since entering the station. Her voice is calm but carries unmistakable authority. Sergeant Williams, may I make my phone call now? Williams nods. Of course, ma'am. Right this way. As he leads her toward the phone, Eleanor pauses and looks back at Bradley. Officer, I suggest you use this time to think carefully about your actions today. Some decisions have consequences that reach much further than we expect. Bradley watches her go, unease gnawing at his confidence. There's something about her calm certainty that bothers him more than any threat or protest would. Eleanor settles at the phone with Williams's help, her cuffed hands making the process awkward. She dials a number from memory, waiting through 3 rings before a familiar voice answers. James? It's your mother. I'm at the downtown police station. No, I'm fine, but there's been a misunderstanding that needs your attention. Bradley can't hear the other side of the conversation, but Eleanor's tone remains steady and measured. Yes, I was arrested. I was feeding pigeons in Riverside Park. No, there's no need to worry, but you should probably come down here when you have time. She hangs up and returns to the booking area, where Williams is reviewing the arrest report with growing skepticism. Mrs. Washington, Williams says, I'm going to recommend release on your own recognizance pending further review of these charges. Bradley explodes. You can't do that. I made a lawful arrest. You made an arrest, Williams corrects. Whether it was lawful is something the district attorney can decide. Eleanor sits on a hard plastic chair, hands finally uncuffed, rubbing her wrists where the metal left marks. She closes her eyes and takes a deep breath, centering herself for whatever comes next. Outside, storm clouds are gathering in more ways than one. At 2:47 p.m., 3 black SUVs with tinted windows and federal license plates pull into the police station parking lot. They move in perfect formation, like pieces on a military chessboard. The desk sergeant on duty notices first. Federal plates always mean complications. He watches through bulletproof glass as the vehicles park in a precise line near the main entrance. Williams, he calls out, we've got company. Sergeant Williams looks up from Eleanor's paperwork, which he's been deliberately processing as slowly as possible. Through the window, he sees uniformed figures emerging from the SUVS. Military uniforms. High-ranking military uniforms. The lead figure steps into view under the parking lot lights. Even at a distance, his bearing commands attention. Ramrod straight posture. Measured, confident stride. Chest full of ribbons and decorations that catch the fluorescent light. Jesus Christ, Williams breathes. Bradley, who's been pacing the booking area for the past hour, stops mid-stride. What's wrong? The front doors of the police station open with pneumatic precision. Two-star General James Washington enters first, followed by a small entourage of Pentagon liaisons and Army Criminal Investigation Division personnel. His dress uniform is immaculate, every crease sharp enough to cut paper. The general's presence transforms the entire atmosphere. Conversations stop. Officers stand straighter. Even the civilian staff sense the shift in authority dynamics. Captain Morrison, no relation to Officer Morrison, emerges from his office attracted by the sudden silence. He takes one look at the general's rank insignia and his face goes pale as printer paper. "General," Captain Morrison says, struggling to keep his voice steady, "what brings you to our station today?" General Washington's voice carries the quiet authority of someone accustomed to moving mountains with whispered orders. "I'm here about Eleanor Washington. I believe you're holding her on some rather creative charges." The name hits Bradley like a physical blow. Washington. Eleanor Washington. General Washington. The connection explodes in his brain like a detonating bomb. She's your... Bradley stammers. "My mother," General Washington confirms, his steel-gray eyes fixing on Bradley with laser intensity. "The 68-year-old woman you arrested for feeding pigeons." The booking area falls silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant rumble of traffic outside. Every eye in the room focuses on Bradley, who suddenly feels like an ant under a magnifying glass. Captain Morrison clears his throat nervously. "General, there must be some kind of misunderstanding?" General Washington's tone could freeze molten steel. "I certainly hope so, Captain. Because the alternative is that your officers arrested a retired educator for exercising her constitutional rights in a public park." One of the Pentagon liaisons, a colonel with intelligence insignia, steps forward with a tablet computer. "Sir, we've reviewed the preliminary reports. The charges appear to be without merit." General Washington nods curtly. "Where is my mother now?" Williams, who's been watching this unfold with growing amazement, gestures toward the holding area. "This way, General." She's been released on her own recognizance. They walk through a maze of institutional corridors, the general's entourage moving like a precision military unit. Bradley follows at a distance, his earlier confidence evaporating like morning mist. Eleanor sits on a plastic chair in the holding area, reading a magazine someone found for her. Her floral dress is wrinkled from the arrest, but her posture remains dignified. She looks up as the group approaches. "Hello, James," she says calmly, as if greeting him at Sunday dinner rather than in a police station. General Washington's military bearing softens slightly. He approaches his mother with visible concern, noting the red marks on her wrists from the handcuffs. "Are you hurt?" he asks, his voice gentler now but still carrying undertones of controlled fury. "I'm fine, son." Just a misunderstanding that got out of hand. General Washington examines the handcuff marks on her wrists, his jaw tightening with each passing second. When he looks up, his eyes find Bradley across the room. "Officer Bradley," he says, his voice returning to its command tone. "Would you join us, please?" Bradley approaches like a man walking to his own execution. His earlier bravado has completely disappeared, replaced by the dawning realization of what he's done. "Officer Bradley," General Washington continues, I understand you arrested my mother for feeding birds in a public park. Is that correct? Sir, there were complaints. She was... Bradley's words stumble over each other like dominoes falling. She was what, officer? Threatening national security? Planning terrorist activities? Or was she simply being black in a neighborhood where you decided she didn't belong? The question hangs in the air like a loaded weapon. Bradley opens his mouth, but no words come out. Eleanor speaks into the silence. James, Officer Bradley was doing what he thought was his job. Perhaps we can resolve this through proper channels. General Washington looks at his mother with visible pride. Even after being humiliated and arrested, she maintains her grace and dignity. You're right, Mother. Through proper channels. He turns to Captain Morrison. Captain, I assume you'll be conducting a full investigation into this incident? Captain Morrison nods frantically. Absolutely, General. Complete review of all procedures and good, because this incident raises serious questions about civil rights violations, false arrest, and potential federal crimes. General Washington's tone is matter-of-fact, but his words carry the weight of institutional power. The Pentagon colonel steps forward again. Sir, the FBI Civil Rights Division has already been notified. They're opening a preliminary investigation. Bradley's knees nearly buckle. FBI investigation. His career, his pension, his entire future crumbling in real time. General Washington helps his mother to her feet with gentle courtesy. Mother, I think it's time we went home. Eleanor nods, then turns to look at Bradley one final time. Officer, I hope you'll use this experience to think about how you treat people in the future. Everyone deserves basic human dignity, regardless of how they look or where they come from. As they walk toward the exit, General Washington pauses beside Bradley. His voice drops to a whisper that only Bradley can hear. Officer, you arrested the wrong person's mother. But more importantly, you arrested someone's mother. Think about that. The entourage exits as precisely as they entered, leaving behind a police station in chaos and one very scared officer contemplating the ruins of his career. The silence that follows General Washington's departure is deafening. Bradley stands in the middle of the booking area like a man struck by lightning, his face drained of all color. The weight of what he's done settles on his shoulders like a lead blanket. Captain Morrison is the first to break the silence. His voice shakes with barely controlled panic. Bradley, my office, now. The walk down the hallway feels like a death march. Other officers watch through doorways, their expressions ranging from shock to schadenfreude. Word travels fast in police stations, and everyone already knows the broad strokes of what happened. Morrison's office is cramped and cluttered, with commendation plaques and family photos covering every surface. He closes the door and immediately starts pacing behind his desk like a caged animal. Do you have any idea what you've done? Morrison's voice rises with each word. You arrested a two-star general's mother for feeding pigeons. Bradley slumps into a chair, his uniform wrinkled and sweat-stained. How was I supposed to know who she was? You weren't supposed to know. That's the point. Morrison stops pacing and leans across his desk, his face red with fury. You're supposed to treat every citizen with basic human dignity, not profile them based on their skin color. Outside the office, phones are ringing constantly. The desk sergeant fields calls from reporters, civil rights organizations, and city officials demanding information. The viral video from the jogger's phone has reached 50,000 views and climbing. Morrison's desk phone buzzes. He picks it up with trembling fingers. Yes, sir. Yes, the mayor. Right away, sir. He hangs up and looks at Bradley with something approaching pity. That was the chief. The mayor wants a full briefing in 30 minutes. The FBI is already asking questions. Internal Affairs is opening an immediate investigation. Bradley's voice comes out as barely a whisper. What happened to me? What happened to you? Morrison's laugh is bitter. You're suspended immediately. Gun and badge on my desk, now. Bradley's hands shake as he unbuckles his service weapon and places it on Morrison's desk. His badge follows with a metallic clink that sounds like a nail being hammered into a coffin. Suspension with or without pay. Morrison stares at him in disbelief. Without, obviously. You're lucky if that's all that happens. Federal civil rights charges carry prison time, Bradley. Down the hall, Sergeant Williams is fielding his own storm of calls. The local NAACP chapter wants details. 3 different news stations are requesting interviews. The mayor's office is demanding hourly updates. Officer Morrison. The younger Morrison, Bradley's former partner, sits at his desk, filling out incident reports with meticulous precision. His hands don't shake, but his conscience weighs heavy. He should have spoken up sooner. Should have stopped Bradley before it went too far. His phone rings. Internal Affairs wants his statement immediately. Officer Morrison? This is Lieutenant Carter from IA. We need you downtown for a formal interview. How soon can you be here? 15 minutes, Morrison answers, relief flooding his voice. Finally, a chance to tell the truth. Meanwhile, at City Hall, Mayor Catherine Reynolds is in full crisis mode. Her press secretary briefs her on the mounting media attention while her legal team assesses potential liability. How bad is this? Reynolds asks, pacing in front of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Bad, her legal counsel responds grimly. Federal civil rights violation against a decorated general's mother. The video is going viral. Civil rights groups are already organizing protests. Reynolds stops pacing. What's our exposure? Potentially millions in civil settlement, plus federal oversight of the entire police department if they find a pattern of violations. The press secretary looks up from her tablet. CNN is requesting an interview. So is MSNBC. Fox News wants a statement. The Washington Post is sending a reporter. Reynolds closes her eyes and rubs her temples. Schedule a press conference for 6 p.m. Full accountability, zero tolerance for discrimination, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. Back at the police station, Bradley clears out his locker with the efficiency of someone in shock. Personal items that seemed important this morning. Family photos, commendation letters, a coffee mug that reads, "World's okayest cop," now feel like artifacts from someone else's life. Other officers avoid eye contact as he passes. The blue wall of silence that usually protects cops from consequences is conspicuously absent. Nobody wants to be associated with this disaster. His union representative, Sandra Martinez, meets him in the parking lot. Her expression is professionally sympathetic but fundamentally hopeless. "Bradley, I'll be honest with you," she says, leaning against his patrol car, a former patrol car. "This is going to be very difficult to defend. The optics are terrible, and the federal attention makes everything worse." "What are you saying?" Martinez sighs heavily. "I'm saying you should probably start looking for a good criminal defense attorney, someone who specializes in civil rights cases." Bradley drives home through familiar streets that suddenly feel foreign. Every traffic light seems to last forever. Every pedestrian he passes might be judging him. The radio news mentions his name, his actual name in connection with police misconduct and civil rights violation. At home, his wife Sarah is waiting in the kitchen with divorce papers already printed from her laptop. She watched the viral video like everyone else in the city. Watched her husband humiliate an elderly black woman for the crime of feeding pigeons. "Pack a bag," she says without looking up. "You're staying at your brother's tonight." And every night after that. Bradley's entire life career, marriage, reputation, future lies in ruins around him like debris from a demolished building. And Eleanor Washington sits in her modest apartment, sipping tea and waiting for justice to run its course. 3 weeks after the arrest, FBI Special Agent Maria Rodriguez spreads evidence files across the conference table like a prosecutor laying out a murder case. The federal investigation has uncovered a pattern of abuse that stretches back 3 years and touches dozens of lives. The statistical analysis is damning, Rodriguez tells the packed room of federal prosecutors, civil rights attorneys, and Pentagon liaisons. Officer Bradley's arrest record shows clear racial targeting. 87% of his quality of life citations involved Black or Latino residents in gentrifying neighborhoods. General Washington sits at the head of the table, still wearing his dress uniform from a Pentagon briefing that morning. His mother requested he let justice run its proper course, and he's honored that request. But his presence ensures everyone understands the gravity of the situation. District Attorney Rebecca Carter flips through witness statements with growing alarm. We have 47 complainants who've come forward since the video went viral. Similar patterns of harassment, false arrests, planted evidence in some cases. The evidence tells a story of systematic oppression disguised as community policing. Bradley didn't just arrest Eleanor, he terrorized an entire community of longtime residents being pushed out by gentrification. Agent Rodriguez displays a series of text messages recovered from Bradley's phone. These communications with other officers show deliberate coordination. Quote, "Time to clean up Riverside District. These people need to learn this isn't their neighborhood anymore." The racism is explicit and undeniable. Federal prosecutors exchange glances. This isn't just misconduct, it's conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, a federal felony carrying 20 years in prison. 6 months later, the federal courthouse in downtown fills to capacity for United States vs. Bradley news. Trucks line the street outside. Civil rights organizations have turned the trial into a symbolic battle against police brutality and systemic racism. Eleanor Washington enters the courthouse wearing a navy blue dress and walking with quiet dignity past a gauntlet of cameras. She's become an unlikely symbol of resistance, featured on magazine covers and invited to speak at universities. Inside the courtroom, Bradley sits at the defendant's table looking 20 years older than his 32 years. His expensive attorney, paid for by his brother's second mortgage, shuffles papers nervously. The evidence against his client is overwhelming. Federal prosecutor James Liu delivers an opening statement that resonates beyond the courtroom walls. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about the fundamental promise of equal justice under law. When Officer Bradley decided that Eleanor Washington didn't belong in a public park because of the color of her skin, he violated both her constitutional rights and his oath as a police officer. The prosecution's case unfolds with methodical precision. Witness after witness takes the stand to describe Bradley's pattern of harassment. The jogger who filmed the arrest testifies about what she saw. Officer Morrison, granted immunity in exchange for his testimony, describes years of watching Bradley target minority residents. He called it urban renewal, Morrison testified, his voice barely audible. Said we were doing the neighborhood a favor by moving certain people along. When Eleanor takes the witness stand, the courtroom falls silent. Her testimony is devastating in its quiet power. I taught second grade for 35 years, she begins, her voice steady and clear. I taught children from every background, rich and poor, black and white, native-born and immigrant. I taught them that everyone deserves respect and dignity. She describes the morning of her arrest without anger or bitterness, simply stating facts. But her words paint a picture of casual cruelty that leaves jurors visibly moved. When Officer Bradley kicked the birdseed from my hands, he wasn't just scattering food. He was scattering the peace I'd found in retirement. The simple joy of caring for God's creatures. Bradley's defense attorney, Thomas Whitfield, attempts damage control during cross-examination. Mrs. Washington, isn't it possible Officer Bradley was simply responding to legitimate community concerns about... About what? Eleanor interrupts gently. About a 68-year-old woman feeding pigeons? What threat did I pose to anyone? Whitfield has no answer that doesn't sound racist on its face. The defense case collapses quickly. Character witnesses paint Bradley as a good family man and dedicated officer, but cannot explain away the video evidence and damning text messages. His wife, now ex-wife, refuses to testify on his behalf. Expert witness Dr. Amanda Foster, a police misconduct specialist, provides devastating context. Officer Bradley's actions fit a textbook pattern of discriminatory enforcement. He used quality-of-life policing as a weapon against minority communities, particularly in areas undergoing gentrification. The prosecution plays the viral video one final time during closing arguments. In the courtroom's hushed atmosphere, Bradley's words ring out clearly. "This park isn't for people like you." Jury deliberation takes less than 4 hours. We, the jury, find the defendant, Robert Bradley, guilty of deprivation of rights under color of law in violation of Title 18, Section 242 of the United States Code. Additional guilty verdicts follow for conspiracy, false imprisonment, and filing false police reports. Bradley's shoulders sag as each verdict is read. His legal career is over. His freedom hangs by a thread. Judge Patricia Williams, no relation to Sergeant Williams, delivers the sentence 3 weeks later. The courtroom is packed again, with Eleanor Washington sitting in the front row, flanked by her son and daughter-in-law. "Mr. Bradley," Judge Williams begins, "your actions represent a betrayal of the public trust and a violation of the constitutional rights you swore to protect. Your pattern of behavior demonstrates not a momentary lapse in judgment, but a systematic abuse of authority motivated by racial animus. The sentence is severe, but just. 3 years in federal prison, 2 years supervised release, $50,000 in fines, and lifetime prohibition from law enforcement employment." Bradley is led away in handcuffs, the same handcuffs he used to humiliate Eleanor Washington, now binding his own wrists. Outside the courthouse, Eleanor addresses the media with characteristic grace. "This was never about revenge," she says, her voice carrying across the crowd of reporters and supporters. "This was about accountability. About ensuring that what happened to me doesn't happen to other grandmothers, other fathers, other children who just want to live their lives in peace." General Washington stands beside his mother, pride evident on his face. "My mother taught me that justice isn't about punishment. It's about making things right and ensuring they don't happen again." The civil lawsuit settlement comes 6 weeks later. The city agrees to pay Eleanor Washington $2.3 million and implement sweeping police reforms, including mandatory body cameras, bias training for all officers, and civilian oversight of misconduct investigations. But the most important victory isn't measured in dollars or prison sentences. It's measured in the dozens of other Bradley victims who finally feel safe to come forward, knowing that justice, however delayed, is still possible in America. 6 months after the trial, Eleanor Washington sits on the same bench in Riverside Park where her ordeal began. The morning sun filters through oak leaves just as it did on that fateful day. But everything has changed. The park buzzes with different energy now. A bronze plaque mounted near her bench reads, "In honor of Eleanor Washington, educator, community leader, champion of justice." Children on field trips from Lincoln Elementary read the inscription aloud, their teachers explaining how one person's courage can change the world. Eleanor opens her familiar paper bag of breadcrumbs. The pigeons recognize her immediately, gathering at her feet with trusting familiarity. But she's no longer alone on the bench. Marcus Rivera, the coffee shop owner who witnessed her arrest, brings her a complimentary latte every morning. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly white woman whose child Eleanor once taught, often joins her to feed the pigeons and share neighborhood gossip. Sarah Carter, the jogger whose viral video sparked national outrage, stops by regularly during her morning runs. "It's beautiful how this place has brought the community together," Mrs. Patterson remarks, scattering breadcrumbs with practiced ease. "Bradley tried to divide us, but he actually united us instead." Eleanor smiles, watching children play in the jungle gym while their parents chat comfortably on nearby benches. Sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best outcomes. Pain can become a purpose if we let it. At the Pentagon, General Washington uses his mother's story during leadership training sessions. Standing before auditoriums full of military officers, he speaks about dignity, respect, and the responsibility that comes with authority. My mother could have responded to injustice with anger, he tells a room of colonels and majors. Instead, she responded with grace. She turned a moment of personal humiliation into a catalyst for systemic change. That's the kind of leadership we need in every institution. The military has adopted Eleanor's case as a training example for civilian relations. Her photo, the dignified woman in handcuffs maintaining her composure, appears in ethics textbooks and civil rights curricula across the country. Meanwhile, in a federal minimum security prison in Pennsylvania, Bradley serves his sentence with the bitter knowledge that his actions destroyed not just his own life, but hurt countless innocent people. Prison has given him time to confront the racism he spent years denying. He's enrolled in educational programs about racial bias and restorative justice. His cellmate, a former gang member serving time for drug charges, has become an unlikely teacher about the impact of systemic discrimination on communities of color. "Man, you really thought you were cleaning up the neighborhood," his cellmate asks one evening as they watch the news. "You were destroying families, breaking up communities that existed for generations." Bradley no longer has excuses or justifications. The man who once saw Eleanor as a problem now understands that he was the problem all along. Officer Morrison, the young cop who finally found his courage, now works for the American Civil Liberties Union as a police accountability advocate. He travels the country training officers about ethical decision-making and the importance of speaking up against misconduct. "I was a coward for too long," he tells police academies. "I watched my partner abuse his authority because I was more afraid of conflict than injustice. But Eleanor Washington taught me that silence in the face of wrong is complicity." The police department has transformed dramatically. The new chief, appointed after the federal investigation, has implemented community policing programs that emphasize relationship building over enforcement. Crime rates have dropped while community trust has soared. Eleanor's settlement money funded scholarship programs for minority students pursuing careers in education and social justice. The Eleanor Washington Foundation has awarded over $100,000 in grants to young people committed to serving their communities. Today, as Eleanor finishes feeding the pigeons, a young police officer approaches the bench. For a moment, tension ripples through the small crowd of morning visitors. The memory of that other officer, that other morning, is still fresh. But Officer Jennifer Martinez, a rookie cop participating in the new community engagement program, approaches with respectful deference. "Good morning, Mrs. Washington. Beautiful day, isn't it?" Eleanor's face breaks into a warm smile. "Yes, officer." "It certainly is." Martinez gestures toward the children playing nearby. "I wanted to thank you. My daughter starts second grade next month at Lincoln Elementary. The teachers there still talk about your legacy." "Every child deserves excellent teachers and safe communities," Eleanor responds. "That's what we're all working toward." As Martinez walks away, Eleanor stands slowly and gathers her empty breadcrumb bag. She looks around the park one final time, at the diverse families enjoying the morning sunshine, at the plaque honoring her courage, at the community that emerged stronger from injustice. Share this story if you believe every person deserves dignity and respect, regardless of their age, race, or circumstances. Follow for more stories of ordinary people creating extraordinary change in their communities. Tag someone who needs to see this message of hope and perseverance. Comment below. What would you do if you witnessed injustice in your neighborhood? Eleanor Washington proved that one person's courage can spark a movement for justice. She showed us that dignity in the face of humiliation can be more powerful than anger. She demonstrated that the arc of the moral universe really does bend toward justice, but only when good people refuse to stay silent. What legacy will you leave in your community? Will you stand up for dignity when it matters most, or will you look away when courage is needed? The choice, like the power to change the world, is in your hands.
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.